I know it's a little late in the night, but I might as well get this out of the way now. As of 11:17 this morning, Terrence Gene Boella, aka the immortal Hulk Hogan, was proven mortal. As after some time, he, as this morning, late this morning, the Hulkster passed away from a heart attack at the age of 71. Hulk Hogan, the character, and Terry Boella, the man, are two different people, for better or worse. On the one hand, one could argue Hulkamania, it was a precursor to other major populist movements, and he became the first major icon of the WWE as it transitioned away from the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in 1984. Now, admittedly, I am not, nor have I ever been the biggest Hulkamaniac. I was born at the tail end of Hulk's first run with the belt, and I didn't really get into pro wrestling until around the new generation. Don't get me wrong, I knew who Hulk Hogan was, thanks to one of my older cousins, but I was too young to understand pro wrestling. It wasn't until I was like 6, 7 years old, and Hulk had left the WWF at the time and gone to WCW. But even then, I was still a WWF guy and kid. It wasn't until 1996 when he reinvented himself and started the New World Order that I took a bit of interest in him, which quickly faded when I realized he was basically burying everyone that went after him to try to get the WCW title off him. And I hated Hogan for that and thought to myself, maybe he did a lot of the same level of politicking in the WWE to keep himself relevant. And sure enough, if you go by some of the stories by people who knew him at his worst, as well as those who knew him at his best, he did. He did a lot of that shit. So yeah, there's the other side of the coin. Terrence Boella being a master politician in the ring. With wrestling companies, especially when he basically bulldozed to being the main character in the stories, whether he was the good guy or the bad guy. And this, and sure, I was happy that when Hulk returned to the WWE in 2002, I was happy he got one last run with the title. It was a little nostalgia run, so I could see what it was all about, even if it was a shell of its form. Even if Hulkmania back by then was basically a shell of its former glory. And then came the dumb shit. A year later, he was forced into the Mr. America gimmick. Even I knew this was Hulk, and it was stupid, but this was a way to phase him out. 2 years later, he gets a WWE Hall of Fame induction by Sly, putting a storyline with Shawn Michaels, which leads to one of the worst SummerSlam main events of all time. Then, months later, he's called in to induct his longtime best friend, Mean Gene Okerlund, into the Hall of Fame. Then, months after that, put in a SummerSlam match with Randy Orton, where he refuses to put the young guy over, which was a nasty habit of his when he was in both the WWE and WCW. And then he just seemed to fade away from wrestling for a time. But then, for me at least, came the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of how much I could tolerate the Hulkster. 2010 to 2013, where he basically ran TNA into the ground, trying to get it to fit his image, which basically turned into a WWE copycat, more for the worse than for the better. Thankfully, by fall of 2013, he left the company. But as a trade off, he left it in a state where, even to this day, one could argue TNA has still, to certain extents, never fully recovered. I mean, as Hulk Hogan, the character, Terry had all the qualifications to be a hero. He was tall, he was strong, he said all the right things, train, say your prayers, take your vitamins, that sort of stuff. But Terry Boella, the man, had deep character flaws. He was dishonest. At times, he was dishonest, he lacked integrity, and seemed incapable of holding himself accountable to mistakes or his mistruths or his lies. More often than not, doubling down on shit. And Hogan knows best showed him at his absolute worst. But in his later years, he cleaned himself up to an extent. Got himself baptized, legitimately became born again. But people basically booing him out of a building just because he endorsed Donald John Trump. How fucking petty are these people? Are people? I mean, sure, many of these people are hardcore who booed him out the last time he showed up in a WWE venue at the Netflix premiere of Raw. Look, do I think whatever he said in 2007, 2008 was uncalled for? Yes. Do I think the apology was hollow? Yes. But do people deserve to be spitting on his grave just because he pushed for Donald John Trump? In my view, no. To the people who are mocking his death, go fuck yourselves. Because it shows you're as petty and petulant as many woke lefties who are so hardcore stupid. Condolences to his friends and family. At least I know the Hulksters found peace upstairs. Hulk, I may have been too young to understand you. I didn't really grow up with you all that much on my television. But I'm glad to have known you on screen at all. So what's heaven gonna do when the Hulkster runs wild, and runs on through? God, Hogan's your problem now, for better or worse. Comment, like, share, and subscribe. I'm Mets2128. Goodbye. Good night. Bang. And Hogan, rest in peace, brother.